Everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here, TYT Nation. Jeff and Ron with you here on this Wednesday afternoon. Sup, Ron?
What's up, dude?
Hey, good to have you back as usual for the first segment today. So we're gonna dive right into that, so we can get so we can talk about this, just like everybody's been talking about this. Yes, you know what we're gonna talk about. Oprah 2020.
Wait, who?
I know, right? All right. So let's get started here. So on Sunday night, Oprah Winfrey gave, from what I heard, was an excellent speech. I don't know. I did not actually listen to it. I actually despise Hollywood award shows.
Man. Really, you're not an award show guy?
I hate award shows. I think it's a waste of time.
So, me too. I'm the same way. Like, I don't get the point of it. I don't understand why people aren't completely bored, but it's boring.
It is boring.
I don't like, and people like it. I mean, I guess like if you're really into like fashion or something.
Yeah, sure.
That's interesting and that's cool. Like I get it. You want to know what people are wearing and stuff like that. And, if that's your industry, especially like my sister's in the fashion industry. So I think she gets into that part of it. I don't even know if she does, to tell you the truth. But yeah, I just don't, the joke that I used to make, I used to say like, look, if I just want to watch a bunch of celebrities jerk each other off, I'll try to get invited to a party at the Playboy Mansion. Like that used to be how I looked at award shows. Unfortunately, he was no longer with us, so I don't say that anymore, except for just now, I guess. But yeah, like I don't get award shows. I don't get the point of them. I think they're just overly sentimental, like kind of fluff, and yeah, I don't get it. Not for me. I know people like them, but not my cup of tea.
Yeah, not hating on people who love it, but yeah. I just don't, like Ron, I just don't see the point. See, this is why this is the perfect conversation for you and I, because we are both people who hate award shows. So anyway, she gives this speech, which I guess was supposed to be great. And following this speech, Oprah 2020 was born. Now, let's be clear. Oprah did not say that she was running, right? But it's this Hollywood rumor mill, right? And there's people apparently that have been pushing her to run, and all this stuff spawned some excitement among the Democratic Party. There's a lot of liberals out there and who love the idea, and of course there are some who also hate the idea as well. There is so much being made about this, Ron, that there are polls now. There are polls. This is from conservative-leaning Rasmussen, right? And what they did is they talked to likely voters after the Golden Globe speech and found that 48% of likely voters decided they would cast their vote for Oprah if the election were held today. Remind you, she's not running. Ooh, Lucy alert.
Yeah, I know. She was like, her tail was just wagging like.
She's excited. So if the election were held today, 48% would go for Oprah and 38% would go to Trump. And so automatically here you have, a lot of liberals, even some progressives that are like, oh my God, Oprah could win. Yeah, of course she could win. A stale ham sandwich could beat Donald Trump. And that just says a lot about the person who previously challenged Trump, how unpopular she is. And we always bring up that the most disastrous defeat in Democratic Party history. And that should not be overstated, right? But, okay, but the whole thing drives me crazy, Ron. Now we're talking about another celebrity billionaire who's, according to this rumor mill, should take on another celebrity billionaire or alleged billionaire. This whole conversation drives me insane.
Yeah, and I think there's a chance it's much ado about nothing. Of course it is. This sort of mirrors how things started with Trump, really. I mean, a couple years ago, people were like, Trump's not going to run. That's ridiculous. And then look at what happened.
Oops.
I didn't take it seriously for the longest time, admittedly. I even said, I remember it was John Fugelsang's show where things were starting to heat up a little more, and this was back in 2015. where he was saying, he was like, Trump's actually a kind of legit contender at this point. And I was like, no, like I didn't buy, and no one else on the panel did, like John was the only one that was like, no, I think, and turned out he was right. I mean, I was wrong.
Well, John's a smart dude too.
Yeah, he is, and he was right on that one. I mean, I've even talked about it with him since. I was like, yeah, man, you really, I was wrong. You were right on that one. So this is kind of like a similar situation where a bunch of people but then other people are excited about it. So I'm not going to say one way or the other if I think it is or isn't. I mean, anything is possible. Of course, I hope she doesn't run. I don't think that this is what the country doesn't need, another, out of touch capitalist billionaire. They really don't. And she, and now people are kind of digging into her past. They're digging into like, well, she supported the Iraq war, but then she didn't, but then she, and as far as all that goes, I think she just kind of swayed with popular opinion because, she definitely supported the Iraq war. She wrote off the idea of WMDs, or excuse me, she, said that WMDs were definitely there. She wrote off the idea that, that was overstated. At a time when the Dixie Chicks were scared for their lives. And then later, when people realized that, oh, this is completely messed up and this is lies from the Bush administration, she kind of shifted her tune as well. So she kind of just followed, the liberal latte rhetorical wave on that one. So yeah, I mean, I hope she doesn't run. I hope this is just some fluff. And I'm sure she made a nice speech, and that's great. That's great that she made a nice speech.
Yeah.
But, I don't want to live in a country where the president of the United States can say, it all started with the speech I gave at an entertainment awards show.
Right.
That's not how I want to be doing our politics. Not that it would necessarily be any worse than what's going on now.
No, arguably it would be better.
I'd like to have a viable progressive candidate in 2020. And Oprah is not a progressive, and I don't think that would be that's not what this country needs. Of course, the Democrats are probably going to jump on the idea of kind of fighting fire with fire. Let's fight a celebrity billionaire with another celebrity billionaire. But there's a lot of
problems.
There's a lot of reasons why it wouldn't be a good thing, and the biggest one being, we live in such an age of access journalism and, a corporate media where everybody is kind of buddy-buddy. I mean, Nancy Pelosi's son was partying with Trump on the New Year. So I think someone like Oprah, who is kind of like the same celebrity status as Trump, if not maybe even more.
I would say more.
But is well liked. I mean, people like her, and
she
that's
is a likable person.
Excuse me?
She is a likable person.
Absolutely. And I don't watch her show, so I can't really say anything about that one way or the other. Like, I'm not familiar with her show. I think the last clip of it I saw was when she gave everybody a car. Which, if she did that with healthcare, maybe I would suck it up and vote for it, Jeff. But,
that's the biggest problem here, is that we don't know. Like, maybe that's not the biggest problem. It's like the second biggest problem, because I got a bunch of problems with this. But she is a policy blank suit. Like, we don't know. We just don't know. Like, and that's the problem. Like, I feel like
just to finish what I was getting at is that, when you live in such an age of access journalism, my biggest concern, policies aside, is that we would be in an era where nobody would want to hold her accountable as a president for anything. Like, just the lens of critique would be completely shut off. People kind of dozed off during the Obama years. I think this would be a hibernation like nothing we've ever seen before. So that would be a concern.
Yeah. I think the best quote that I've seen on this actually came from another celebrity, to be fair. Seth MacFarlane. He said, Oprah is beyond a doubt a magnificent orator. which apparently I am not. But the idea of a reality show star running against a talk show host is troublingly dystopian. We don't want to create a world where dedicated public service careers become undesirable and impractical in the face of raw celebrity. And I think that's really the big point here. This has turned into, like, do you remember when politics was boring, Ron? I remember when it was boring and kind of wonkish, and you're like, okay, we're watching C-SPAN, and, you know, nobody's throwing feces at each other. Okay, great. They're actually trying to get things done for the country. And, yeah, I don't agree with those guys over there, but they're bringing ideas, and their ideas are kind of stuck, but they're kind of working together. I remember when it was boring. Now, it's not boring, but to the detriment of this country. It's turned into daytime television. It's turned into a WWE match. At some point, somebody's going to, like, bring a chair and hit Donald Trump over the head with it.
Yeah, I mean, that pretty much sort of already happened. He actually has a history in professional wrestling.
He does.
And, you know, I think the biggest thing here, we don't want future generations to watch the movie Idiocracy and think it was a documentary.
Yeah. And so, like, again, this is my problem. And the other problem here, and I think you alluded to it a little bit, is that I think we have made politics too much about the person, too much about personality, and not enough about policy. And see, that's the big problem. Like, I don't care who you are personally. If you have good policy and you're sincere, I will support you. And that's it. Because that's what this entire thing should be about. It should be about policy. And unfortunately, this entire hype about Oprah running shows that as a society, we're not there. We're valuing celebrity far more than people who actually have real ideas. And that's
well,
the big
here's
problem.
the thing. I think we are and we aren't. I mean, I think there's
Maybe you're
two
more
sides of
positive
that fiddle. Huh?
Maybe you're more have a more positive view about this than I do. But I have a much more cynical view of this, because I think that we have as a society fallen into the cult of celebrity. Because look, we have a celebrity president.
I disagree with that. Yeah. No, I'm totally with you there, and I totally understand that, and I agree with you. However, there's also reason to kind of doubt and to kind of feel like people are sort of, their arms are twisted into that. And here's a couple kind of counterpoints, even though I see where you're coming from, and I do agree with that. We definitely have a cult of celebrity that's problematic, but I think there's more of a differentiation into the politics than the public's given credit for. You look at the Hillary Clinton campaign. There were more personal attacks in that campaign than any other campaign. I mean, they made it all about the outlandish things that Trump said and stuff like that, which, yeah, I mean, Trump is a despicable human being. I mean, but that was pretty much all they ran on. That was pretty much all they had. It was one of the most personally based political campaigns ever. And studies have been done on it.
Yep.
It didn't work. You know, it failed to work. Donald Trump did run on personality, and that was enough to win, which goes to the point, like, yes, we do have a cult of celebrity, but he also made a lot of promises. He also made a lot of empty promises that some really disenfranchised people connected with. And I think even though his celebrity had a lot to do with it, this whole idea of this rogue outsider had something to do with it as well. I think that they both played into it. And you look at Bernie Sanders, you know, I mean, Bernie Sanders is, you know, an older guy with messy white hair that's been around a long time and has been kind of, you know, working in his own aisle for years and years and years.
Sure, yeah.
And he starts saying these ideas that people didn't hear a presidential contender say, and he's filling up stadiums. So I think there's kind of two sides to it, where people really just want someone that's going to make their lives better. But yeah, the cult of celebrity is still an issue. But I don't think that we need to have Oprah shoved down our throats. Right. Let me have a contender in 2020. And I know some people are saying that, and I don't think that's true.
Ron, let me push back. Like generally, I agree with what you had just said earlier, but I got 2 points. Let's not forget the role that racial resentment had played in the election of Trump. And because that's also another factor along with the other factors that you had cited. And let's not forget that there are some people on the left that have made the Bernie movement all about Bernie Sanders and not necessarily the policies. So I've seen some of that as well. So look, I'm biggest Bernie bro you can get, but I'm there because of the policies. And we got to recognize that not everybody's with us because of that. Because he and himself is now a bit of an icon as well. And that's a great thing. But at the same time, I think some people will feed more into his now elevated status.
Maybe. But he's an icon because of the policies he was pushing, not because he's Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. That's a good point.
He's an icon because of the ideas that he brought to the table. I see where you're coming from. And yeah, certainly, racism and sexism, did help Trump get elected. And that's really sad that we still live in that country. But there were a lot of other empty promises as well that I think that if it was messaged the right way and if it was sold as not a lie, you could really motivate a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, okay. You are late to go, so I kept you over again. Sorry about that. Thank you, though, for staying. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Always a pleasure.
Always, always, always. All right. We'll see you guys. We'll see you next week, man. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break. And I'll be back. We got more stories, so stay right here around the nation. And we're going to have some fun. All right. Be back. Welcome back around the nation, right here, TOT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Got more stories here. But first, if you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. Definitely appreciate that. As I also want to thank the patrons for supporting us, patreon.com/TOT Nation. That definitely helps to keep the show going and growing. So thank you to everybody who does that, who helps us out. All right, let's move into the stories. This is great. Darrell Issa. Done. Ladies and gentlemen, down goes Darrell Issa. He is done. Darrell Issa recently announced that he will not be seeking re-election in 2018. I'm going to read you a statement here. He said, throughout my service, I worked hard and never lost sight of the people our government is supposed to serve. If you mean by the giant multinational corporations, then sure. I mean, they are considered people now. So, yes, you serve them and you serve them quite well. You also served your base which is full of people who are into conspiracy theories. Now, he continues, with the support of my family, I have decided that I will not seek re-election in California's 49th district. You know what that means? It means that he knew that he was going to be destroyed in 2018. So he's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and I'm going to work in the private sector. I'm going to be a lobbyist. Because there's no way I'm going to win re-election. I mean, the question is, how did anybody like that even win in California? I mean, let's look at some of the things that Darrell Issa is famous for doing. He has been known as the attack dog against the Democrats. Well, look what he's done. First of all, he was one of the leading voices in the Benghazi investigation. You know what happened in that investigation? All 9 of them turned out to be essentially nothing more than a witch hunt to both President Obama and Hillary Clinton. Look, I got a million problems with Hillary Clinton. Benghazi ain't one of them, right? She literally did nothing wrong as Secretary of State, and the Obama administration hadn't done anything wrong either except for some PR, right? They didn't do anything criminal, right? Oh, but Darrell Issa also did an investigation into Fast and Furious, right? So Obama administration selling guns to the Mexican cartels. I mean, how could you? How could you do that? First, for one, that doesn't seem to make any sense because Obama was supposed to come and take everybody's guns. Why would he be selling them to the cartels? Again, that doesn't make any sense. If you're arguing that, while also arguing that Obama's coming to take your guns, you're a fucking moron. Like, you have no sense of reality. No. What actually happened with Fast and Furious is that, yes, the government was monitoring gun sales and gun smuggling from the United States to Mexico. Unfortunately, because of our lax gun laws, they couldn't actually go in and stop those sales, meaning that somebody from the cartel could just walk into a gun shop in Arizona, buy up all the guns, and then say, see ya, I'm going back to Mexico now. And there you go. He walks out with all the guns, and those guns go right to the arms of the cartels. So that's what Darrell Issa was looking into. And of course, he made all these political witch hunts. Again, he was nothing more than a political attack dog. So that's what he did. He wasted taxpayer money on these investigations and hadn't actually done anything for his constituents. Hadn't done anything to make the constituents' lives better. He took millions of dollars in lobbying, dollars from the corporations and didn't do anything with it. So the real reason that he's leaving is that he knows, thanks to the polling and thanks to his association with Donald Trump, that he cannot win. He is a loser. Now, he has been a big supporter of the president, but lately he's had to moderate himself, which is hilarious, because polls have shown that he is now incredibly vulnerable. I mean, the last election, which was, I think it was a 3-way election or 4-way election, he nearly lost against Doug Applegate. Now, guess who's running against him? Again, Doug Applegate. And this time, Applegate has a pretty good chance of winning, or had a pretty good chance of winning, against Darrell Issa. Now Issa is out. Now, Applegate, he's running on a platform of, hey, I'm not taking corporate money. I'm actually going to serve you. I'm in favor of Medicare for All, which is very popular, not only in California, which has its own Medicare for All bill, by the way, but it's also popular across the country. So with Issa out and Applegate already being pretty well known in the district now, well, this is going to be a very, very interesting primary. And it's actually going to be a very good chance for Democrats to be able to pick up Issa's seat. So it's actually going to be very, very fascinating to see how the race shapes up now that Issa has tucked tail and ran. All right. So there's the breaking news for that. Let's roll into our next story here. By the way, before I do that, I'm going to give a thanks to Nicholas Muller for using the super chat. So thank you, Nick. I definitely appreciate the donation. So thank you. All right. Moving. Like rats seeing like Like rats fleeing a sinking ship, staffers are now leaving the White House en masse. According to sources cited by CBS News, the White House has reportedly told staff to decide by the end of January if they will be leaving the administration or would be staying for the midterm. So this is John Kelly. He's like, okay, which one of you guys is going to stay? Anybody's going to stay? Anybody? Bueller? Looking for somebody to stay, right? According to the source, the White House is facing an exodus of staff drawn to higher pay packets in the private sector amid plunging morale and exhaustion. You know, I couldn't imagine why there is low morale. I thought that I thought heads were going to be spinning by how much winning we're doing. I mean, we're doing so much winning here, thanks to the Trump administration. In reality, look, to be honest, I think a lot of the staff did get a win. And let me explain. The tax cuts. Look, most of the people were there to make sure that President Trump cuts taxes for the rich. That was the whole purpose, right? That's the whole purpose of the Republican Party, is to give enormous tax breaks for the rich and corporations. That's what they're there for. So, hey, look, mission accomplished, right? So I think a lot of them are going to leave. Now, furthermore, the article notes, the notification is intended to give the White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly, an idea of the number of staff intending to leave so departures can be staggered. Now, why would they want to do that? Well, they want to avoid the impression that there is a rush to leave what is considered an embattled administration. Yeah, no, let's make sure, like, you can leave on Tuesday, and you can leave for, like, next month, and then we'll stagger it out, right? Because I know what the press is going to be. I know what they're going to say, and what they're going to say is 100% true, that people are fleeing the Trump administration. And look, they already have a really hard time keeping people in the administration. They've got so many jobs that are unfilled. And there's a couple of problems with, or a couple of reasons for that. Now, for one, I go to CNN on this one, who said that sources close to the West Wing told CNN that the Trump administration is finding it difficult to fill certain vacancies, as the Russia probe focuses on close Trump aides and the president's popularity has plummeted in the polls. So, look, Donald Trump is incredibly unpopular, massively unpopular. And, of course, the Russia investigation. Look, you may disagree with me on how much Muller has, on whether or not they could take down Trump. I think they can. I think they're going to go after him with the money laundering. And I think there's a very good chance that they're going to indict him with that. What comes from that, I don't know. Right? And that's just my personal speculation based on what I know so far, right? As far as him being incredibly unpopular and people around him being unpopular, we'll just look at some of the recent races. I mean, you've had a lot of Democrats making inroads in very conservative areas, a lot of progressives that are winning local races now. Thanks to the unpopularity of the Republican Party and Donald Trump, yeah, it makes sense. A lot of these, look at Congress, right? You've got a lot of Republicans that are no longer going to be running for office. The latest, of course, is Darrell Issa. Then you have Jeff Flake, and then you have Bob Corker. You have many others who've decided, you know what, I'm not going to run because I think we're going to get slaughtered because there is a wave. It looks like there's going to be a pretty good midterm for Democrats. But that means, of course, turnout. You've got to turn out because it's not just going to happen on its own. People actually got to get out there and vote. Now, not only that, but look, you got to wonder why people aren't just lining up to join the Trump administration. Well, they're not because, like I said, there's a lot of different factors that I had just mentioned. Now, clearly there's a lot of people that are leaving because of a range of different factors. Russia, popularity, better jobs in the private sector, and of course, getting the tax cuts, right? So that's what's going on here. So who is leaving and who has left? Well, in December, Deputy National Security Advisor Dina Powell announced that she would be departing the administration and is expected to leave after Vice President trip to the Middle East. So he's going to the Middle East, and Dina Powell is going out the door. Among other high-profile departures in Trump's first year were Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, who is now pouring Baileys on a cereal, whom was replaced by John Kelly, Communications Director Mike Dubke, and Anthony Scaramucci. Of course, the Mooch wants to come back after he was fired after 11 days. And, of course, you have Steve Bannon, and the Bannon-Trump fight is awesome and amazing. I absolutely love it. According to the Wall Street Journal, there has been a higher first-year turnover of staff in the White House than any other prior administration. So, look, that's important to note because, yes, every administration has turnover, of course. I mean, you look at the Obama administration, you had several high-profile departures. But when you look at the Trump administration, it's actually far higher, the rate of turnover. I mean, this place is like a revolving door. People go in and then they come right back out. They're either fired by Trump or some of the staffers, or they have to leave. Now, again, you wonder why. Well, it's because of quotes like this from Michael Wolff's book, Fire and Fury. Several staffers close to the president are quoted being critical of the way the White House runs. Former Goldman Sachs executive Gary Cohn, who leads the president's National Economic Council, cited describing Trump as, quote, an idiot surrounded by clowns. Well, that sounds about right. He is an idiot, and he is surrounded by clowns. And he's surrounded by people who are basically, to his face, yes men, and then talk shit about him behind his back. So, now Cohn goes on to explain why so few new staffers are being hired. Quote, they only accept people who pass ridiculous purity tests, even for mid-level policymaking jobs where the people will never see the light of day. Quote, I'm in a constant state of shock and horror. I think we all have been, Gary. I think we all are. But hey, look, Gary Cohn, the whole point of him and Steven Mnuchin joining the administration is so they could push for tax cuts for the rich. So then my question is, for Gary, when is he jumping ship? Maybe. Maybe soon. Okay. All right. Moving on. All right. Now, recently it was reported that President Trump's lawyers are in negotiation with special counsel Robert Mueller's office in order to conduct an interview as part of the Russia investigation. Their interview would be with the President of the United States. Now, obviously, Trump's lawyers are desperately trying to keep him away from a one-on-one, in-person interview. They actually believe that it would be quite disastrous and are actually trying to float the possibility of him responding to questions in a written format, because you can't possibly mess that up. Why? Oh, they get the written question, he confers with his lawyers, and they come up with a nice, flowery, lawyerly response, and everything's great. But you talk to Trump one-on-one, it's going to be a complete disaster for him. He's not a smart person. He's not exactly a stable genius. But anyway, now that whole thing does not bode well for the confidence that the Trump team has in their leader. But it's not just Trump's lawyers that have weighed in. It's actually many other legal experts, and their opinion on this is unanimous. Don't do it. Do not talk to Mueller. For the love of God, don't do it unless you want to get caught, right? Unless you want to... Oh, look, let me just give you the quotes here. One source who was described as having knowledge of the Mueller investigation tells New York Magazine's Kristen Farias that Trump is the kind of client that gives attorneys nightmares because he will, quote, humiliate you and destroy you because he just can't follow directions. How sad. Now, the Mueller team will be ready to go with a lot of very important questions, very, very specific questions that are calibrated to and designed to trip up the president. He says, and the president's lawyers will have a very difficult time controlling his responses. They can't even control him on Twitter. And that's where he says some of the most ridiculous things. So they can't control him on Twitter. They sure as hell can't control him on a one-on-one interview with Mueller. Now, it gets worse. The source told Farias, quote, he's a loose cannon. No matter how much you prep him, no matter what small words you use, maybe even small tweets, small words inside of tweet size, briefings and all that. No matter how what small words you use to explain to him the potential landmines he could step on, he will leap in blindly and say whatever pops into his head, and that could be a potential disaster. Trump is the kind of guy who's going to walk into, if this happens, if there's a one-on-one interview, he's going to waltz in there and be like, I got this. Don't worry about it. I got this. I have tremendous brain. That's why his lawyers are saying, no, whatever you do, no, don't do it. Do not do this. You were not smart enough to go toe-to-toe with Mueller. At least that's likely what they're saying in private. In public, they still have the same message. Please do not do it, right? Alan Dershowitz, for example, has questioned the wisdom of letting Trump be interviewed by Robert Mueller, although he said he would never be willing to let any client get grilled by the prosecution. Now, okay, look, that's actually smart. That's fair, right? So most lawyers, yes, would not allow you to get interviewed by the prosecutor. But in this case, I think Trump is a very special case, I think, because of his outbursts and his inability to control himself. Now, there's more. Yesterday on Fox, Judge Napolitano said this.
Whether or not the president ought to submit to an interview to Bob Mueller and FBI agents. And my argument is never, never, never in caps should he do that.
Why?
He cannot know what Mueller and his team know about the case. He cannot know what evidence they have. And one lie or one close to a lie about a material matter, and he's facing a potential indictment. I don't know what would happen with the indictment because he's a sitting president. No sitting president has ever been indicted for a crime. But if the feds want to trap you, they are very, very good at doing it. Donald Trump is a very headstrong person who probably believes he is smarter than his interrogators, and he may be, but he doesn't know more about the case than they do. It's a trap, and he ought to stay away from it.
All right.
I love how he said, he may be smarter. No, he's not smarter. He's definitely not smarter than Mueller. He's not smarter than a fifth grader. He's not a stable genius, okay? He is there. He's got a problem, okay? I don't know if he's got like actual mental problems, but he's stupid. He's not a smart person. Now, I have one more expert here that's also going to weigh in on video about the possibility that Trump might talk to Mueller, and here's his opinion on it.
It's a trap.
I had to. I'm sorry. Okay. Hey, man, the guy seems to be an expert on traps, on what is and is not a trap, so I would take his advice. All right. Let's see, here's the thing, right? So his lawyers are saying, don't do it. Experts are saying, don't do it. But there is a political consideration as well. And that calculation is actually being made now. See, if Trump talks to Mueller, he can show his base that he is not afraid of Mueller, right? And that he did nothing wrong, which is certainly a possibility, right? There's a possibility that Donald Trump is just super, super paranoid. He doesn't like people looking into his finances, so he gets really, really angry when people start to snoop around. And that he actually didn't do anything, and his reactions are just him ham-fistedly, bumbling around, trying to get people away from the fact that he might not be as rich as he thought. That is a possibility, that the entire thing about Russia is a complete misunderstanding, and that he doesn't have a deal, and that he didn't do collusion or anything like that. Right? And that all this stuff is just coincidence. Look, I'm willing to entertain that possibility, even though personally I see a lot of coincidental things that happen to work together to show that there might be a deal. But, okay. The political calculation, though, that he could do by talking to Mueller is, well, he could make his base happy because, for one, he could show that he's strong. I'm going to stand up to Mueller and I'm going to tell him face to face that I had nothing to do with Russia. And, you know, people who are fans of Donald Trump, they might sit there and go, yeah, you know what? Yeah, we're with you, right? We know you didn't do anything wrong, and we're proud that you had the balls to stand up to Mueller, right? So that could work definitely in his favor, assuming he did not do anything wrong. And, of course, there's the other thing is that he did do something wrong, and he's so much of an idiot that he accidentally gets entrapped by Mueller. We'll see, right? We'll see what happens on that. Now, again, his lawyers and everybody's saying, please don't do that. If you have to do anything, do a written interview, which is possible. I would rather see him do an in-person, face-to-face interview with Mueller, but that's just me. That's my personal preference, right? Now, the other thing that the lawyers want him to do is just not do an interview at all. Well, that's possible unless Mueller subpoenas him, which would force him to do an interview one way or the other. And that would be hugely problematic, right? So we'll have to see what happens within the next couple of weeks, if Mueller has enough to do a subpoena, or if they voluntarily find a way to do some sort of interview. I hope that personally, again, that is one-on-one. So in Trump's words, we can find out what the hell is going on. Okay. All right. More serious policy news we have for you guys. So we're going to go to that. All right. There's a Wall Street Journal out there with an amazing investigative report on how corporate America, in its efforts to deregulate themselves, might be stealing people's identities in order to post fake comments in favor of repealing regulations at certain government agencies. Now, in this investigative report, they detail how hundreds of thousands of comments have come into at least 5 different federal agencies. Now, these comments would, of course, call for the end to different Obama-era consumer protections. Now, the investigation done by the Journal found that a lot of these comments, a large number of them, did not come from actual human beings. Now, one example concerns the so-called fiduciary rule, right? So that's something that had public comment. So you could go in and you could comment on the fiduciary rule. It was a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau rule. Now, this fiduciary rule was going to be put into place in 2019, right? So the whole point of it was to prevent conflicts of interest between you and your retirement planner. Now, you would want your retirement planner to work for you, right? To get the best deal for you. Well, the fiduciary rule would ensure that by putting a regulation in there that makes sure that you do not have conflicts of interest, that you don't get kickbacks from different investment groups and things like that. Now, this comment period, right, was, of course, inundated by lots of comments, some obviously in favor of the rule, others in favor of repealing the rule. Now, one comment, I should say, came from Robert Schubert. Now, this is a Devon, Pennsylvania salesperson, right? And he's detailed in this report. Now, a comment posted in his name on the Labor Department website opposed the rule, saying, quote, "I do not want, and object to any federal interference in my retirement planning." So, okay, that's pretty strong and straightforward, right? I don't want the government dealing in my business. And there's a lot of people who agree with that statement, and there's people, of course, who disagree. Well, Schubert, in spite of a comment being made in his name, did not agree with that comment. In an interview, Mr. Schubert said the comment was a fraud. He did not post it, and he does not agree with it. He said, quote, "I am disgusted that people can post comments using my name." And that's just one of many examples. Now, in the report, the Journal hired a polling firm that reached 50 people who allegedly commented on different rules, right? They found that 40% of them said that they did not post anything on the department's website. So 50 people, and almost half of them did not post anything, and yet suddenly their names came up in a post that's, of course, usually against the rule. Well, that's just one example. Now, the Journal also previously found fraudulent postings under names and email addresses at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, Securities and Exchange Commission, and the Federal Communications Commission. It continued. Now, the Journal's findings were cited by calls from Congress, by the way, to delay the repeal of net neutrality rules, right? Now, I've talked about that before. They found hundreds of thousands of comments that were pro-repeal that ended up being fake. These are completely fake. They're very, very dubious. Eric Schneiderman from New York, the Attorney General, he was looking into this. And did Ajit Pai care? No, of course not. Ajit Pai ignored the obvious fraud because Ajit Pai is a fraud. And so he decided to throw out the rule anyway because that's what he was paid to do. But it gets worse. While the Journal reported 818,000 identical comments out of 10.1 million collected for the net neutrality rule, after contacting 2,700 senders, they found that 72% said they had nothing to do with them. And yet, they found an even more insidious trend among this, right? Now, it turns out the software that they used, right, that whoever did these fake comments was specially engineered to have subtle differences to make it seem like the comments were more authentic, right? Now, the Journal reported that subtle similarities appeared in 1.3 million net neutrality comments that seemed to be different. The same long sentences appeared in many comments, sometimes up to 30,000 times. And all this stuff, and I reported on some of these comments before, they were what you would consider to be corporate lawyer speak, right? Something that normal human beings wouldn't actually say. And of course, it also happened to match the rhetoric being touted by the company. So, a little fishy, right? And now, it's not just on the net neutrality repeal. This is being used everywhere. In 2017, for example, the CFRB was inundated with fake comments after it attempted to regulate payday lenders. But it's not just fake comments. It's actually worse. Postings the Journal uncovered went beyond merely duplicative. They included comments from stolen email addresses, defunct email accounts, and people who unwittingly gave permission for their comments to be posted. Hundreds of identities on fake comments were found and listed in an online catalog of hacks and breaches. So they are using literal stolen identities in order to say, oh, look at how many people support repealing these Obama-era regulations. It must be these regulations are super, super unpopular. Look at all the American people who are against it. I guess we should go ahead and repeal these rules that will massively help industry. You don't find that fishy at all? Super, super fishy. Now, there's more. It also discovered that the clandestine senders of these faked mass emails were also fabricating pro-consumer comments, apparently to give the appearance that the public cared about both sides, but not enough to reveal or offset their deception. While many fakes were anti-regulatory, the Journal found pro-regulatory comments on the FCC and FERC websites where people said they didn't post them. In most of the cases, the comments that were actually pro-net neutrality, for example, most people agreed with, but they were still mad that that their names were used by these whoever was posting these without their permission. Now, in the cases, while most people did not authorize them, they said they agreed with it, and they said a group or individual might have had their names in a list of like-minded people. That still doesn't give them permission to actually use their names. And some of these people said that they were angry that someone who had access to their email address would end up posting it, even though they generally agreed. So now, that's the method that they used. But who are they? Who am I referring to? Well, the journal, unfortunately, did not uncover the people who are actually doing this. But we don't have to have them pointed out. We already know. It's the corporate lobbyists and the trade associations and the corporations themselves. No, I do not have hard evidence. But think about it. They have the means, they've got all the money, and they have the most at stake when it comes to these regulations. These rules are the difference between making a lot of money and making a fuck ton of money. So, of course, they have the most to gain by repealing these rules. And of course, they also, since they use pro-regulatory comments as well, they try to cover it up by saying, oh no, there's people obviously in favor, but look at all the people against these regulations. But look, it's the companies. They have everything to gain. Nobody gains from removing pro-consumer rules on payday lenders. Payday lenders trap people in cycles of debt with high interest rates. Nobody gains with the repeal of net neutrality, except for the telecommunications companies, who will now put in fast lanes that cost more and are able to block and throttle content. So, yeah, of course it's them. And here's the kicker, right? We've been giving corporations access to our personal data for years. Every time you send out, or sign up for a mailing list or an email, or you go onto their website and they get cookies and they can get your metadata, that's information that is now theirs to do whatever they want with. And the FCC and Congress, well, they will allow corporations to do whatever they want and sell your data to personal or to third party, to third parties, so they can make an extra few bucks. They're selling your information. They're selling your data. So it's no surprise that some of this data and some of these names and email addresses are turning up on fake comments that are there to destroy regulation. And what's worse, of course, is they share this data with the government, and the government shares it with other corporations. They've got all of our info. If they wanted to manufacture fake consent, then they have everything that they need to do it. And so that's what's scary. And we have not paid enough attention to our privacy concerns. And I think we should. I mean, there is a big problem here with consumer privacy. And we don't have enough laws or protections that protect us from this kind of obvious fraud. So we've got to do something about it. And I think the first step is, of course, shining a light on it, right? If we actually expose them for what they're doing, well, then maybe these corporations, they're not going to do it anymore, right? Because we need to catch them in the act, and it appears that's kind of what we're doing, right? So we definitely need to do more investigations and more actual journalism into finding who is actually coming up with these fake comments and who's propagating them and all that, so we can catch their hand in the cookie jar. And from there, we can actually work to put a stop to it. Now, it wouldn't stop something like the FCC. Ajit Pai wasn't elected by the people. However, Trump was elected by the people. The Republicans were elected by the people. Corporate Democrats were elected by the people. That's where we can actually make a difference. That's why I think it's really, really important to vote. In 2018, we've actually got a real shot to get actual progressives to run for office that don't take any corporate money. And if we actually do that, we work together, then we can actually take back our government from the corporations who we know are lying, cheating, and stealing our identities in order to make an extra buck. So if I want to leave you with anything on this story, it's that elections matter a lot. Okay. One more story here for you guys. More corporate malfeasance. Now, one of the promises that went along with the Trump tax cuts was the promise of investment into research and development, along with, of course, creating jobs. Now, the jobs thing hasn't exactly been working out. We've talked about that before. Both Comcast and AT&T, who lobbied extensively for the tax cut and said that it was going to be creating jobs, well, what did they do? They actually eliminated jobs. They also said, oh, don't worry, it'll boost worker pay. Actually, no. While they are giving bonuses, those bonuses, those one-time $1,000 bonuses are actually a very, very tiny part of their these companies' income. They make billions and billions of dollars. It equals out to about somewhere around 0.12 or 0.27% of their annual budget or their annual income. So these bonuses, I mean, look, workers would be far better served if they actually did raise wages. And of course, another reason the wages thing is kind of BS is that, or I'm sorry, the bonuses are kind of BS, is because they could show Donald Trump, hey, look, this is what happens when you give me tax cuts. We're going to give you positive press so that you can take credit while we still save billions of dollars. Now, AT&T and Comcast, like I mentioned, they fired 500 people just before Christmas. Great timing on that. And other reports had 400 people being fired just from the Georgia area. So in Atlanta. So, oops. Didn't exactly turn out with the jobs thing, right? But hey, you could argue, look, okay, corporations don't actually need to hire anybody because, well, there's not a lot of demand yet because the economy hasn't grown. But eventually, right? But not only that, but okay, they've got extra money. Maybe they're going to do some more research and investment. They said that's exactly what they were going to do. Well, it turns out, no, they're actually not. Pfizer has announced that it is shutting down research efforts on treatments for both Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. So these are very important issues, neurological issues. I'm going to show you how many people are actually affected by both of those that are no longer, there are these companies that are no longer looking in for a cure, right? Or even any treatments for them. They're shutting it down. According to the LA Times, the company did not say how much of their budget they were spending on the two conditions, but said that in total, about 300 researchers will lose their jobs as it redirects its research and development budget elsewhere. So not only are they not doing research and development, they're also eliminating jobs, 300 jobs. So these researchers will no longer have careers. But wait, hold on here. The budget, in order to do research and development, should have gotten actually bigger because now they're paying less in taxes and they're actually able to repatriate money at a super, super low amount. Well, I'm going to get to those details later. Now, Pfizer said in its statement about this, well, Pfizer routinely reviews its R&D pipeline. And it said that it was continuing its R&D programs for other drugs such as tanezumab and Lyrica. Oh, that's great, people who need them. But again, it must be a sad day for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's sufferers. Because again, they're eliminating those positions. They're eliminating that research. Now, James Beck, who's chief scientific officer at the Parkinson's Foundation, responded to this statement by saying, it's really alarming to see such a large pharmaceutical company deciding to abandon research into the brain and central nervous system. I agree with that. He said it's telling how difficult it is to do research into neurodegenerative diseases. Why? Why are they not doing it? Because it turns out that it's actually not going to make them a lot of money. And what they do is actually going to affect what other companies do. So if they're not looking into it, there's a good chance, and they're not looking into it because it's not going to lead to a blockbuster drug. That's what they call it. A drug that basically makes them a lot of money, right? Well, other companies are going to look at that decision and be like, well, I'm not going to look into it either because, well, Pfizer is a really, really huge company. If they're abandoning it, then there must not be any potential profit in this. And you can look at that based on the numbers, too. I mean, how many people are suffering from Alzheimer's? About 5.5 million Americans right now. And, of course, that's expected to get bigger as more people get older. We've got the baby boom generation that's getting older, that's beginning to retire. And so those people, it's possible that there's a decent percentage of them that will also end up being afflicted by Alzheimer's. Parkinson's affects about 1 million Americans, according to the Parkinson's Foundation. Now, to show you why they're doing this and what they're prioritizing on, I'd go to R&D chief Michael Dolston, and he told a JP Morgan Healthcare conference on Monday, quote, "The company is explicit about basing its R&D strategy on drugs with multi-billion-dollar blockbuster potential." So think about that. These companies are basing what research they do into how much money they will make for actually solving that problem. It's not about the human element. It's not about we're doing this so we can cure this disease that is impacting millions of Americans. No. We're just doing this so we can make money. That's it. That's all this is about. There is massive, Bernie Sanders is right. There's massive fraud in the pharmaceutical industry. That is their business model is built on fraud. Okay. Now, when you think about that, of course, you think, no, this is wrong. And people suffer from these horrible conditions every day. And just knowing that they're not going to do research or cures or treatments into that because it's not going to make money, that's actually super, super gross, right? But that's the problem. And that's actually why we should have government also do research for things that don't actually make a lot of money, but help make people's lives better. But unfortunately, Republicans, whenever they get into power, they defund the government and they defund that research. And so, and what's even more disheartening from this article is this paragraph. They said the second biggest U.S. drug company after Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, in recent years seems to have devoted more effort to financial engineering than biomedical engineering. In 2015, for example, it announced a $160 billion merger with Allergan, the maker of Botox. The deal was a so-called tax inversion, aimed transparently at cutting Pfizer's tax bill in part by eliminating U.S. taxes on $147 billion in profits it has stashed overseas. So they go and they want to buy this. They want to buy the makers of Botox. Now, Botox does that actually do anything? Does it actually have health consequences, right? No, it's for injecting into your lips and your ass. Doesn't really have, as far as I know, and look, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a researcher on all that stuff, so there might be other practical applications that actually makes people's lives better and actually deal with serious disease. But from what I know, all they wanted to do is we want to buy Allergan because we can save money on our taxes. That's what this is about. Now, that deal was canceled. Why? Well, in 2016, when the deal was canceled, the only thing that had changed was that the U.S. Treasury had implemented rules that eliminated those tax savings. So first they want to buy it, and they're like, no, this has got nothing to do with the tax inversion. We're going to buy them because it's a great deal, and we're going to be able to help people. We're going to be able to save lives. Oops. Oh, no tax savings? Never mind. That deal was, of course, all about the money for their shareholders. Now, the article also notes that Pfizer is expected to be among the prime beneficiaries of Trump's corporate tax cut. The measure allows companies to pay a tax rate as low as 8% on foreign earnings they bring home, a big discount from the 21% top rate the law assesses on domestic earnings. Itself, a big cut from the previous rate of 35%. By some estimates, that could be worth more than $5 billion to Pfizer alone, not counting any gains from the lower tax rate. And you know what they do is they put that right in their pockets. And by them, I mean their shareholders. Now, before the passage of the tax bill, for example, the company announced a $10 billion share buyback on December 18th. That was 4 days before President Trump signed the tax cut into law. Now, likely, President Trump had no idea what he was signing, other than, ooh, it cuts taxes bigly. Well, of course I'm in favor of that. It cuts taxes bigly. That's what I wanted to do. That's what everybody tells me that I need to do, and that's what's going to help me, so I'm going to sign it. Well, it's not actually going to help regular people, and it's definitely not going to help people who suffer from Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. It's not going to help the working class. No, that buyback, by the way, that $10 billion share buyback was on top of a $6.4 billion left to be spent from a previous buyback plan and was accompanied by a 6% increase in the company's stock dividend, which will be worth another $500 million a year. So let's compare that, right? So there's at least $10 billion that they're doing a share buyback, right? So how much is their entire research and development budget? Well, from the years 2014 to 2016, Pfizer's research and development budget averaged about $8 billion. That's a lot of money, right? But still, they use $10 billion for stock buybacks. These are billion-dollar companies, right? But see, we shouldn't be surprised that they did this because they've done this before. In 2004, Pfizer, along with many other companies that brought back billions of dollars from overseas, laid off workers, bought back their shares, and upped CEO compensation. And in fact, Pfizer actually brought back more overseas than any other company. You know how much they brought back? $35.5 billion. Almost tax-free. You know what they did with that money? They used it to buy back $27 billion worth of stock while firing 11,748 workers. That's what they did with this. And that's exactly what they're doing this time as well. Anybody who tells you that cutting taxes for corporations and allowing for tax holidays, repatriation, is going to increase employment, will create jobs, and spur innovation is lying to you. The truth is painfully obvious. We can look at it. We have seen what they've done before. Not only do these companies cut jobs and buy back stock, but they also innovate less. They do less focus on research and development, unless, of course, that drug will end up making them even more money. There is no incentive for research and development. There is no incentive to create jobs. And no purpose exists for this corporation other than to make money for their shareholders. That is the problem with this. Okay. That is a depressing story, but one that we all knew to be true. And that's all I've got for you guys today, actually. I think I've depressed you enough. Thank you for joining me, for going around the nation with me. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share, or consider subscribing to the channel. If you like to see the show, if you like to see all of our different clips that we put up 5 days a week. We also have the show every day, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, right here, TYT Nation. Sometimes we go a little over, sometimes we go a little long, but hey, you do what you got to do. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you to the patrons, of course, as always. Please like and subscribe. And that's it. Love you guys. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Remember, change begins with you. Good night, TWT Nation.